It is that time again. Welcome back, First and 56. Faithful Rondo Griffin, Anthony Goulin. No Marcus Martin on this one. It has been a long time coming. Obviously, we are getting into really the swing of kind of the NFL offseason kicking off. The time we were recording this, the NFL Draft Combine is literally a week away. So, obviously, starting to try and build hope for all of those unfaithful teams who weren't able to win it. Obviously, we just saw the Philadelphia Eagles, win the title, dethroning the Chiefs. So NFL fans as a whole, they're kind of happy. But now let's get to the nitty gritty and let's talk about our faithful team, the Colts here. Gulick, a disappointing season. It's been a long time. We stayed off the air for a while, just really didn't even want to discuss it. But we've got some decisions to look forward to, look up at. We've seen a lot with Chris Ballard and his end of the season post conference. We got some things we wanted. Gus Bradley finally out answered a new defense coordinator from the Bengals, Lou Admison, or whatever his last name is, Lou something. I don't care. I'm tired. It's been a long time. We've been annoyed with it. Let's start first things first. Let's touch on it slightly. Another year ends in disappointment. Is there anything we could take away to hopefully look, positive coming up for this next season?
I think there's a few things. I think Richardson's potential flashed a few times. Obviously he's got to be more consistent, and we've been seeing some reports that now, I guess he's working out with Josh Allen's, old throwing coach that fixes throwing motions from year one to year two. So I think Richardson's flashes at the end of the year, especially that Jets game. The first game off the benching, he came back, played a great game. And some of the defensive players I thought were really good. I thought that Laiatu Latu was really good in the snaps that he played. You look at the advanced numbers. I mean, he was putting up actually more pressures than Jared Verse did, who ended up being the defensive rookie of the year, and he got almost half as less snaps as him, and that's just due to Gus Bradley's scheme, which is good that we got the new defensive coordinator in here because now he's going to be rushing the passer a lot more. He's going to be on the field a lot more. Um, and then I think some of the offensive line play was good, but outside of that, I mean, that's the only few positives. There are very few positives that we took away at the end of the year. Um, but for me, it was just a few flashes, no real, I guess, consistency. I don't really care about Zaire Franklin's Pro Bowl. I mean, he led the league in missed tackles, so I don't really care about that too much. But I think that there are flashes of things that could be great next year. I think is about putting it together to put up or shut up year.
Yeah, 100%. And just so we're not, highlighting the same type of people, so I'll go a different route. JT coming back, and he showed he was well worth the money. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, we've kind of said it that this offense kind of go. It's kind of funny how really the offense is carried by him in 11, 28 and 11. It really is the offense. But he showed this past season that he's a top back in this league. He's absolutely crucial to the success of this football team. And obviously, when you give him the touches, he puts up the numbers. So obviously, another electric season from JT. And I guess you had also, the offensive line, because let's think back. We were begging for left tackle after Cassandra retiring. That's locked in now. So at least the small kind of important pieces of the offense, it's there. Obviously it comes full circle on Richardson and what he can do, because obviously we're going to only go as far as he can take us. And the quarterback is very crucial part to this team. And sure, were there flashes? Absolutely. But it just annoyed me because almost of a sense of like we were trying too hard or trying to move too fast, if that makes any sense. I mean, it was basically his rookie season 2.0, and I didn't really like what I saw. Outside of the first couple of games of the season, it was just I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I mean, I get it. He's young. It's part of the growing pains. But the issue is that the way we were kind of built, in that we were supposed to be fighting for the playoffs, fighting for the postseason, and then obviously you fall flat of that. On top of the fact, Richardson, you look at his numbers, just pure the numbers, and they were terrible. You're very disappointed because you look around the rest of the AFC and you see all these teams, all these young quarterbacks, and they have it figured out. And then there's us forever stuck in this no man's land where we're not bad enough to tank, but we're not good enough to compete. So, and so let's get into it. End of the season, rare from Chris Ballard to hear him admit his mistakes and say that he's going to change going forward. So Obviously, the 8 years he's been here, going on year 9, we've seen him not attack free agency, not add to this team in terms of outside hires, if you will. And as we know, as we're presently sitting, we're not contenders. We're stuck in that no man's land. So first things first, before we even jump into any specific names, how serious can we take Ballard's comments at the end of the season in terms of building this team? Because it's year 9, and you and I have probably been more of the patient ones in terms of waiting for him to, work the process. How hot is this seat coming into this next season?
I think that the seat is hotter than it ever has been. I think that personally, he's gonna make at least one move this offseason. I think that he got around the same flack and criticism a few years ago, right before he brought in Gilmore. I mean, people were saying he wasn't spending his money, and then he came out of left field with that move. And then he decided to run it back last year, and running it back necessarily wasn't the best move. So I think that bringing in competition is going to be good. And I think that realistically, I mean, they grilled him at that press conference, man. Like, those reporters said, I'm still never gonna forget this stat. Every single playoff team added at least one starter in free agency last year. Every single playoff team added at least one person in from the outside. And that's when he said he was wrong and he needed to bring in some outside competition. So I think that personally, I think he knows if this year fails, he gets fired because pretty much the outlook of the year, because everybody wanted Ballard and Steichen gone after this year, but realistically, I mean, this is one more year of AR, Steichen, Ballard, that trio. If this fails, all three are going to be gone at the end of the year if this fails. So I think that the seat is hotter than ever, and he's got to make at least some type of move that will, potentially help. And, even if you make a move and it doesn't work, you can at least say you tried. But just sitting there with your hands tied, I don't think he does that.
Yeah, exactly. But I think part of it though is that's what kind of scares me, is because he waited so long and tried to do it his natural way through the draft, and neglecting free agency. While you say, you brought the number that every single playoff team added at least one starter. And we're sitting there not doing it. And what scares me about it is that now he might just go splash money, just like you said, just say, "Oh, I tried," and that terrifies me, because I think you kind of have to ask yourself, looking at the team as a whole, presently sitting right now, and we'll get into our personal free agents. How many pieces away are we from? I don't want to say like Super Bowl run, but just a playoff run. You know what I mean? Because coming into this season, I believe all three of us thought that it was just Richardson figuring out the roster around him was fine. As we saw, it got kind of exposed. There were some pieces or some holes which told you this team wasn't serious to be a playoff contender, a serious playoff competitor. So it really kind of dives to the question of just like, how many pieces do we need and at what position? So it kind of segues into, I guess, the next point of this. We're talking free agency. We've got a notable list of guys, Gulick, who are due up on our squad. I don't want to run through all of them, but I mean the top five, the top three that scream out: Ryan Kelly, Dio Odegbo, EJ Speed, and I guess the number 4, Julian Blackman. Of those four, who you got coming back, and anyone that I didn't list, who you think's really coming back?
So first off, I think that Dio is going to come back. I think that he's done too much good for him to not be brought back. Ryan Kelly, I think he's cooked. He's done. Bortolini came in, the rookie last year. He plays some great center. Blackman, people were really excited about Blackman coming back, but Blackman, to be honest, he didn't play well last year. EJ Speed, Zaire Franklin's running mate. Once again, I don't, I don't think he comes back either. Just because this new scheme that's gonna be ran, I don't really think he fits it. I don't. But to be honest, I don't think Franklin fits it either because um, you need coverage linebackers, and Franklin clearly is not a coverage linebacker. Neither is Speed. So I think Dio's gonna come back. He's been good. Rushing the passer. He's been good stopping the run. It's just a matter of getting on and off the field with Dio. And just looking at the list of our free agents, I mean, just looking at some of these guys, I mean, I think Will Fries is a big one. Um, Will Fries, he did get hurt. He played a lot at right guard before he got hurt, and he was actually playing very well. So I could totally see us bringing him back. He was probably due for a big payday before that injury, but that would probably be the only name because a lot of these guys are just rotation guys, and even guys like Trey Sermon who got on the field a lot. I could easily just see us like drafting a running back and getting rid of him. So I think that Dio and Will Fries would be the two big ones, at least from my opinion here.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy because it's like the more I look at the list of like free agents have now, I'm really sitting of this radical idea of just that I'm almost like you just don't bring back any of them. You know what I mean? It's like kind of like you said, it's like a lot of them are rotational, but even then, it's like the guys that we have that we're going to release that are starters for us. I'm like, do you even start on most other teams? And I think with Ryan Kelly, I think that's kind of a mutual one. I think when you saw his kind of his exit interview, if you will, I think he even kind of like alluded to the fact that he's probably done. Obviously, Tanner Bortolini coming in and us not really dropping a beat probably helps to aiding that. On top of the fact, Danny Pinter's a free agent also. If anything, that's a cheaper option if you really wanted that, a starting center, even then a swing tackle and not. Plus, I've liked Danny Pinter, so I mean that's what you bring back. Dio, I'm just like I'm not. Would I bring him back? Sure, but it's got to be cheap. If he wants like an average deal, I'll say you go somewhere else. If you want to come back for cheap, I'll take it. He was nice, sure, but if we're looking at being serious, he's not a starter on a playoff team. I think he's a rotational guy at best. By all means, he's still young. He could prove me wrong, but in terms of what we saw on the field, I don't think he's guys who are gonna ever rack up like 10 double digit sacks for you in a season. EJ Speed, that obviously that was my guy when we drafted him. I spotted him. I think his time's done. I think he's kind of peaked. You mentioned the scheme, and I'm with you on that. He doesn't fit the scheme. On top of the fact that because of Zaire Franklin's play style, and maybe we'll even get to him later of like his longevity with this team, you need someone to counter what he does. Zaire's a ball hawk and a tackle guy. You need a covered, you need a covered type of linebacker. It worked in the past because we had Leonard, who was an all-world guy, but he could play coverage. And even Bobby Okereke, for an extent, was also a coverage of linebacker. So it made up for the lack of what Zaire was doing. But with the new scheme and even that Zaire's new position, you need someone to kind of counter and make up for what he's deficient at, which is obviously in the coverage. And I'll say this because he's on the list. Look, if Mo Ali Cox is on this roster next season, I don't even know. I don't care that project is over and done with. Really, if I want to be real radical, I said the entire tight end room, let them all go. Like the tight end position, and we're gonna get into that real soon when we talk draft. But the tight end position as a whole that we've had for the past few years, it's kind of funny how with left tackles Costanzo and trying to find the next guy, finally found Raymond. We had Jack Doyle, and we've been forever trying to find that consistent tight end, and it has not worked. But Mo Ali Cox, he's got to go. Kylan Granson, he can go too. Neither one of them do anything, and I've said it before, like in a group chat. All the tight ends that we have on the roster presently, I think I'd max like a tight end 3. They're not even a tight end 2. So, but yeah. So I mean, before I start free one all over the place, Dio if he's cheap, Will Fries, I'm okay with that. Danny Pinner. I think the rest you let him walk. You let him go.
Yeah, just to talk about the tight end room real quick. I absolutely agree. I mean, they were just so bad, man, so bad. And especially Granson too. I'm out on Granson. I think that they really tried to look for him this year. He got more looks than Mo Alley Cox did, but the drops with Granson and running the wrong routes. Like I'm so out on Granson. If Cox or Granson are back on this roster. It's just so unserious.
Yeah, exactly. It's you cannot explain any. I don't care if it's a vet minimum deal. Just let them go. They don't do anything helpful. So let's talk draft. Let's talk draft. Combine, like I said, combine right around the corner. We're sitting at 14. So middle of the pack of the draft. It's been very early mocked that Tyler Warren, the tight end, that's the move. I've seen pros for it. I've seen cons for it. I've seen, you go defense. I've seen, take a first round tight end. I've seen, we saw what Brock Bowers did last year. Gulick, where do you stand? We're just going to talk sitting at 14. We'll get into scenarios of moving up or moving down. But sitting at 14, position or even specific prospect, where is your mind at?
Yeah, I think that this is the most obvious no-brainer pick that you make, taking Tyler Warren. I've been one to watch him a lot during the college football season, and he fits exactly, legitimately exactly what you want in this type of offense. He's not a guy that just goes out and makes crazy catches. Granted, he had 1,000 yards, but you look at some of his highlight plays. I'm thinking about the one against USC. The dude snapped the ball, lined up at center, and then ran out wide and caught the touchdown. And he's a menace in the running game as well, blocking. So this is the exact type of prospect that you would want to fit in your offense. And I think, we've just been missing that element the past few years. I mean, a big reason why, Steichen had Jalen Hurts so successful a couple of years ago, and the Colts reporters even mentioned this, is because, you had your two receivers on the outside, which we finally do have our two receivers on the outside. You got a great slot receiver in Downs, but they also had Dallas Goedert at tight end. They had a big threat at tight end. We don't have that threat at tight end. So you put your three best corners on those receivers. I mean, we're kind of stuck. We're kind of stuck on that. Or if you line up your two best corners on Pierce and Pittman, you know, linebackers will cover whoever is in the slot. I mean, we're kind of stuck. So if he's there, I mean, I think it's just the biggest no-brainer move you go for. If he's not there, then there's other guys that I got my eyes on, but I think you got to go with Tyler Warren.
Right? And so as of right now, February 23rd, I'm probably the most conflicted I've ever been since we've been doing this whole podcast thing when it comes to that first round draft pick. Because while I recognize and understand that tight end position is a glaring hole in our offense, I've been on Adrian Reyes' podcast enough. He's obviously been gloating, and he was right on how Bowers was the guy. Now, obviously, he didn't fall to us, but, Bowers looks like the next great tight end, and we're, like I said, we're sitting here with this revolving door of and they all can't catch and they all can't block, and like you mentioned, you watch Tyler Warren. If you watch his college tape, obviously he just pops. He is a man amongst boys, if you will. But I'm just so conflicted just because of the fact that if we're sitting at 14, and again, it's all mock draft, we don't know, and the actual draft is 2 months away. But if I'm sitting at 14 and I've seen it where Will Johnson or Malachi Starks is sitting there, I'm not sorry, but I don't know how you pass about either one of those guys. Especially since we just talked about how, you're probably not bringing back Blackman anyway. So you've got a glaring hole at starting safety, and we, even then, on top of that, you look at the corner room outside of Kenny Moe, who's actually reliable. You know what I mean? Juju Brents can't stay healthy. Sammy Womack, it's a great 1 year, but we've seen a plenty of 1 year wonders. So I don't want to, pull our eggs in that basket. I mean, case in point, Dallas Flowers. Dallas Flowers, his first year, we thought he was solid, and then you come back and what happened? So, and I've said Will Johnson is by far easily the best corner in this draft. If by some way he falls to 14, like I'm like, look, tight end's a need, but I don't think you don't pass that up. And so we're gonna segue into it of like this with this draft specifically. Do you want an offensive? Do you want a defensive? I think it's already just kind of a weighted question because we kind of been talking about it, alluding to it already. The offense is really, for the most part, kind of set. It needs that one position at tight end. The defense is where we need all these. We need impact guys. Like I said on Adrian Race's podcast, that we need a guy who's a mouth. I want a Ray Lewis, a Richard Sherman type. Obviously, you're not going to draft that. That's going to come free agency. But draft as a whole overall, Gulick, you go offense or you go defense, and I'm talking about the majority of the picks.
I think this is a no-brainer to me. I think that you got to go defense. You got a new defensive coordinator. You got to rebuild this defense here, and um, I think that this might be the draft where there's a ton of sleepers in the later rounds. Um, just like you said, I love Malachi Starks as well. That would be like my number two prospect. Will Johnson. Um, I've seen a lot of different mocks on him. There's been some of him going in the top five, some of him going in the top 20. So you never really know with Will Johnson. But what one thing that I've been seeing a lot lately, and then if you think about it, you know I think that this new defensive coordinator from Cincinnati, he kind of got scapegoated because Cincinnati didn't really bring back any of their pieces. I mean, granted, last time they had Jesse Bates, which was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they went to the Super Bowl, but they replaced him with a bunch of just mid-level starters. Like they replaced Jesse Bates with Geno Stone from the Ravens. Like, no wonder their secondary stinks because you're going from an all-pro player to a mid-level player at safety. And like at corner, they let all of them walk. Even their mid-level corners who are playing just decent, like Awuzie, they let them walk and go to Tennessee. So, you know, you got to give the guy talent. You got to give the guy talent. But like as you said here, as of today, it's February 23rd. So let's just say Ballard goes out and goes out and gets some defensive free agents. Well, then you can go out and draft offensive, or vice versa. If you go out and get a tight end, even a mid-level tight end like Mike Gesicki, you get a mid-level tight end, you can go out and draft defense. But it's too early to say right now, but I would say defense just because you got to get players that fit the scheme, and you got to just get players that this guy's going to like because you pulled out the checkbook to get this guy because he was a big hire. He was a big hire. He was a shout out name. People wanted him, and luckily we got him. So if we're gonna pass up on Dennis Allen to go and get this guy, you better give him what he wants. So that's my opinion as of right now. Defense.
Yeah, like I said before I posted, it's obviously weighted just because I think we've been kind of alluding to it that the defense is really the unit that needs kind of the manpower. But so let's go back to the drafting, with the tight ends. I think why I'm so conflicted is because the small amount of homework that I've done so far. Obviously, Tyler Warren, he's elite. He's crazy. He's obviously gonna be the first tight end off the board. But I think that this draft, and again, as of February 23, where I'm saying this, if you pass on Tyler Warren, there are guys who are gonna be there on day 2 and maybe even day 3, but for sure day 2, who will still be adequate and obviously be a massive improvement over what we presently have. I think you're kind of looking at a situation where to just make it ridiculous. Like if we're calling Tyler Warren, for example, like Travis Kelce, the guys underneath in this draft are, Jack Doyle's at the minimum. Jack Doyle's not going to impress you anything like on a stat sheet, but he was Mr. Reliable. And I've kind of said that that's all you really need on this team anyway, because of what we have already. We have JT, we have Pittman, we have Downs. We don't, like I've said, we don't need a tight end to come in here and basically be wide receiver number 1. If you get that, great, it's a bonus. But for example, you look at like Brock Bowers to the Raiders, that is their number 1. So he's going to get all the targets. He's going to get all the looks. We can draft a Tyler Warren, but if you want to go in the pecking order for the receiving unit, on paper, he'd be number 3 behind Pittman and Downs. And with that logic, I think that's why you go defense. But really, I've always been a proponent of that. You play the board as it falls to you. So sitting at 14, it's especially as of right now, it's really tough to even kind of to fathom predict who's going to be where. I mean, heck, let's go back to last draft, Gulick, where did none of us thought that we were taking the first defensive player. I think when we all mocked, I think I took a corner. I think you might have taken an edge. I don't even remember. At one point you took an edge, but it wasn't Latu. Like, obviously, no one expected that. So I think, I guess if you put a gun to my head, I say you go Will Johnson if he's there. You go Malachi Starks if he's there. Even if you go Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame if he's there. And that I'm saying that as if, let's say, they're all available. Tyler Warren's there at 14. I think you still go defense just because that unit needs more help.
Yeah, that unit definitely needs a lot of help. And I want to bring up an underrated position real quick, which I've been, advocating a lot for every team, really. I mean, this is the draft right now for running backs, and if you pick a running back a sixth, seventh round, even undrafted, some of these guys, I was just looking at the list, while you were talking, Rondo, and even like running back, like for example, running back 19 this year is Ollie Gordon, and last year that was a Doak Award winner. I mean, he was the best running back in the country last year. Granted, he had a down year this year at Oklahoma State, but like guys like Phil Maffa, the starting running back from Clemson, he's listed as running back 21. Woody Marks from USC, who's also solid running back 22. So in terms of free agency, again, get rid of Goodson and Sermon. You can pick up a guy that's undrafted on a rookie minimum deal. So and just like you said, for the tight ends, like in terms of offensive position groups, you can kind of sway your way that, but then again, with that, but there's a big difference, from Malachi Starks to safety five, you know, because that guy's out of this world. So I say offense, if you're looking at this year, this is definitely the year to look in the later rounds, outside of round one, outside of round one.
Well, yeah, I mean, heck, I'll do you one better. Let's just look at past Colts history. Marlon Mack was a fourth round pick. Naeem Hines was a sixth round pick. And both those guys were solid. JT was took in the second round. So, and to your point of like the running backs, Cam Scatabo, who a lot of people said that he should have been in the Heisman conversation, he's RB5 in this draft. You get him as a battery mate to JT, because I think we all kind of understand that the amount of touches and the season that JT had this past year, it's not sustainable for the ongoing future. Derrick Henry is probably the one of one who can do that. And at least as far as we're concerned, I don't think we want that for JT. But yeah, I'm with you. This is definitely the draft to, day two, for sure, day three. Get a nice running back who can be that battery mate. And then, like you said, we can let the current incumbents on the roster, let them go. And, and to your point, piggybacking, because you kind of took it from me as well, the drop off on the defensive prospects in this draft is crazy. Because, like I said, obviously with Will Johnson, number 2, Ben Morrison out of Notre Dame. He's a nice corner, but it's a steep drop off from him and Will Johnson. You know what I mean? So like that, I think this is why I lean towards the fact of that if Will Johnson is sitting there at 14, you have to take him. If Malachi starts sitting there at 14, you have to take him. Just because, like we talked about, the depth on the offense side of the ball for as far as the draft is concerned, and as far as our team is, it's wide enough to where you can afford missing the top guy because, like you say, the prospect 3, 4, 5, 10, the drop off isn't as steep. It's almost kind of like when you're playing fantasy football, and then there's certain positions you can choose to neglect because the drop off isn't that steep. I think we're looking at this year with the offensive defense side of the ball when it comes to this draft. So we talk draft. We know, at least on paper, via word of mouth, that Ballard is said he's going to attack free agency. We've kind of been alluding to it, and maybe even a little bit cheat code. But so Gulick, is there a position or a position group or even a name where Ballard, it's an absolute? He needs to sign I don't want to say necessarily a significant starter, but someone who is going to play significant snaps for that position group currently as a free agent. Anyone that comes to mind, or a position that is specifically must be hard focused before the draft?
Yeah, to me, I think it's got to be either linebacker or safety. But you know, this is a pipe dream. I know it's not going to happen, but I think for me, like if you want to make a big splash, I see you go after Talanoa Hufanga from the 49ers. He got hurt this past year, so I wouldn't give him like a max deal or anything like that. But that guy was a first team All Pro safety, and that guy ain't going back to the 49ers. And the same thing with Greenlaw, the linebacker. Those guys are gone. They've said their farewells, and they're done. They're legitimately done. I've seen on social media that their families were throwing farewell parties at the end of the year. They're leaving San Francisco. So if you could pick up one of those San Francisco guys, I think either of them would fit great in the scheme. There were times when Greenlaw was in talks with Bobby right before Bobby left to go to the Giants. People were saying Greenlaw was just as good as Bobby. So if we can bring in a linebacker of that caliber where he can tackle and he can cover a little bit, that would be pretty good. And the same thing with Hufanga. If that guy, if he could mess around and get healthy again and perform like a first team All Pro safety again, that would be great. But besides that, I don't really see any big names here who really excite me as much. But once again, in terms of defense, we got to turn this ship around here because we can't just be outscoring teams. I mean, that's what happened. Like I said earlier, with AR showing flashes in that Jets game. That was a high scoring game, man. We can't have AR out here trying to outscore the Jets or the Patriots on a week to week basis. Dude, the Giants dropped 45 on us, or whatever that was at the end of the year. So we can't be outscoring teams anymore, man.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm with you on Greenlaw. Really, the kind of the second that farewell post posted, in my head, I was like, that's got to be priority number one right there. I mean, he fits everything. He fits absolutely everything that we've been talking about and what we need. And again, you're getting a guy from. He's been around a successful culture in the Niners. Obviously, they haven't got it done. Getting a ring, but he's a guy who's also he's played with Buck, so Buck's familiar with him specific. I think did they play together or maybe not? Maybe not. I'm gonna say no.
Yeah,
I don't
maybe
think
not.
so.
He
Maybe
might have
not.
got drafted the year that Buck
Yeah,
got here.
right. But the point being is that Greenlaw he fits a lot of what we talk about holes on his team that are necessary. He's an impact defender more than anything. Obviously at the linebacker position, and I'm gonna throw a wild card one out here, and I might get some slack for it. Taysom Hill. I want him. I want that badly. He look gimmick player all you want. His numbers and what he does when he touches the field don't lie. He is the ultimate Swiss Army knife, and he showed this past season he was the best tight end that New Orleans had on the roster. It just so happens that he can get under center and throw a couple passes and play makeshift running back. And even then, here on top of it, you pick him up. It takes less of pressure off of JT. You're taking less carries of him, and even then, Google it. How many times were we in the red zone and we not get it done? And I mean, I play fantasy
Yep.
football. Taysom Hill has been my sleeper tight end for the past few years. You in the red zone, he's pretty money, you know. And and I think the funny part is too is that he's on the field. Everyone knows he's getting the ball, and he still scores anyway. So
Yep.
if he gets cut with the talks are that New Orleans is gonna let him go, you go get him. Absolutely go get him. You can still draft one, but I want him for sure, and I'm with you. I want Greenlaw.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm just taking a look at some of the other free agents right now. I mean, there's definitely some some intriguing names here. I mean, if you want to take a chance on a rotation guy who could maybe revive his career, I mean, yeah, I know a lot of people would hate this, but like, let's just say you take a chance on Chase Young, give him a vet minimum deal. I wouldn't give him like,
Uh, mm,
I don't know, like there's just some
uh,
guys here, like there's some guys like I don't know. I feel like there's always one guy in every free agent class where like you think they're a has been, and then they go to some team where the scheme changes, and then they play well. Like I mean, honestly, kind of look at Danico Autry for us. I mean, he was kind of a has been before he got to the Colts, and then he played for the Colts for a couple of years. He played pretty well. So there's got to be at least some guy out there like where you get him for a vet minimum. I mean, even look at Samson Ebukam, man. I mean, Samson Ebukam was pretty pretty mid with the 49ers and the Rams before he got to us, and then he played pretty well when he was healthy. Um, and that's also another guy here too. I mean, we're not bringing him back. He's like 30 coming off a Achilles tear. No way we're bringing him back. But I feel like there's one guy in this free agency class where you're just like, oh, okay, that's a decent signing. You give him the vet minimum. So let's just say 3, 4, $5 million, and then end up playing well. So who knows? We could sign a guy like that.
All right, so I just pulled up the list myself, and it was kind of funny because I was thinking about the past and what we've done. What about Khalil Mack?
Yeah, that would be pretty good. Except the only thing with him is I saw that he's contemplating retirement, so that's the only thing.
Uh, yeah.
I wanted him last year because I remember they were going to give up Bosa or Mac, and they ended up bringing them both back. But I wanted Mac last year.
Yeah. And then now that I'm looking at this, I mean there's a few. So there okay, so there's another name on here, but I mean I'll put this. I'll be gently shocked to be touched on Mark. That's Nick Bolton. I don't think he's leaving KC. If for
No.
what if by some miracle he does, I think he tops Greenlaw for me.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
you gotta get him. He's great in
But
coverage.
yeah,
You gotta get him.
I mean KC is basically gonna hand him a blank check, so that's pointless.
Yeah.
Looking at corners though, because this is obviously it's been a discussion. A lot of people have talked wanted Charvarius Ward from San Francisco. The two that kind of intrigue me a little bit though, DJ Reed and Asante Samuel Jr. It's kind of to your point of where that change of scenery might make a change for them. Asante Samuel's only 25. DJ Reed
Yep.
28. So we're still with that age thing. And again, we're at the point of where we just need bodies. Our
Right.
the secondary, the depth last year, we were at one point, we were starting CB4 and CB5 from the opening of the year. So I'm not against, getting names in there, just getting bodies in there. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you though. I'm like just kind of looking it over though. There really is no kind of like impact guy. So I guess we'll close it with this because it was a talking point kind of like after the season ended a little bit. So obviously Flacco's a free agent. I don't think he's coming back.
No.
The argument of bringing in a vet to test AR. People have been floating Justin Fields. I don't like it. So maybe not Fields specifically, but Gulick. A final question to close off this episode. What is your opinion on the veteran to challenge the young player for his position?
Um, I think in general, here, I think that's a great statement to make. But I think it has to be the right one. Just like you said, Fields pretty much is the same player, so I don't really like that at all. People are talking about Aaron Rodgers. No, no. Um, but it just depends because you look at some of these names here, and like who's really gonna challenge AR? I mean, like James Winston, maybe, like, and that guy's all over the place, but. I necessarily don't even know who you bring in. I really don't even know who you would because if it's competition to me, it's got to be legit competition because Flacco, people said, oh, he's better than Anthony Richardson, and he came in and brought in a bunch of stinkers. So that was no competition. He's not even better than him. So, I like the idea. The idea I think is really nice, but I don't know. Maybe quarterback competition might be seen as a draft type thing if you draft a guy in the fourth or fifth round, but I don't know necessarily who you even would bring in like Russell Wilson, like I don't even know Jacoby. Like if you bring back Jacoby, is that competition? Like I don't. They're just I don't even know who you would bring in to be honest.
Yeah, for myself, I don't think I've ever really believed, at least for the quarterback position, I don't think I've ever believed in the you bring someone in to compete, with your young player, with your rookie or whatever. I think that's always been counterproductive because if people want to say the situations where you've done that and it works, I think those are exceptions to the rule for one, or two. I just think they're not random situations, but it wasn't necessarily the goal, because like people always like to point to the fact that Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith for a year. I'm like, okay, but the difference is that Alex Smith was successful with the Chiefs. He was an incumbent, and then they drafted Mahomes to observe and then eventually take over. But you look at a case of like, let's use Russell Wilson. He was drafted. They weren't expecting him to start. They had just paid Matt Flynn big money to start, and Wilson won the job from him. They didn't draft Wilson to test Matt Flynn or whatever. They drafted him as a backup and a benefit for the future. He showed in practice he was a better player. But I think you're at the point where, so we're be going on year 3. There's no point in testing him or he's gonna get benched. It has to be is you figure it out or your career here is gonna be done. Like I forgot who said it, but the saying of if you have 2 starting quarterbacks, you really have no starting quarterbacks. You don't ever prep your backup. If you're prepping your backup, you're expecting to lose. I make fun of it all the time. I'm like, hey, Gula, who was Peyton Manning's backup while he was here?
Jim Sorgi, and
Yeah.
that guy never played.
No, so the funny thing is, right, so like, everyone names that, and I'm just like, if you actually look it up, Jim Sorgi wasn't his backup the whole time.
No,
Which
yeah, I
which
don't even
that's
know.
the right. So
Yeah,
that's the point. So, and to your point also of that, like, it's gotta be the right one. I agree with that in theory, but the other part of that, the other side of that issue is that all free agent quarterbacks, with the exception of some, want to be signed so that they can start. So if you're going to a free agent of, yes, I need you to come challenge my young player who's the franchise. Now if you win the job, you get to start, but that's it. You're not going to get a youngish guy to take that. You know what I mean? And so like I someone asked me, like if you had to pick one who, I would say, okay, if you absolutely want to go get a quarterback to challenge Richardson, I'm like, all right, go get Josh Dobbs. Maybe I'm still living in the fantasy of what he did. Was it 2 years ago when he was
yeah,
balling with Arizona, balling with Minnesota? Then he kind of fell off. But I'm like, he's 29, so he's still kind of in that prime-ish range of a quarterback in this league, and it'll be kind of similar to when we had Jacoby. He's in that era where he can kind of prove that he can be a starter and ideally get paid by somebody else. But I'm like, if you're really going to go get somebody, get him, but otherwise, like, I just don't see a point. Ironically enough, because I was against it, but Minshew really was the perfect backup quarterback back when we had him. So you
yeah.
kind of need another scenario like that. You get a guy who's young-ish and not so much test, but he could be a mentor, but also use his time here to get paid somewhere else. We got Minshew paid by Vegas. You're gonna get someone equal to that, but I don't, like people have floated, Justin Fields, Sam Darnold. I'm not with that.
Yeah, nah, and I'm kind of conflicted too because it's like I said, Minshew was a great backup, but I'm kind of over like getting a pocket passer, and then you're running like a completely different
Yes,
offense,
yes.
especially that Steelers game when AR went out and Flacco came in, like in the middle of the game, you're changing your entire scheme. It's not even like you have a week to prepare for that. You're coming in running a completely different offense. So I don't necessarily want anybody specific, but maybe somebody mobile, somebody. Even I mean, you know, people are probably gonna hate me for saying this, but even if you bring in like Daniel Jones on a vet minimum, like he's somewhat of a mobile quarterback, and you're bringing him in to sit. Like who knows? Just somebody mobile.
Yeah, so I'm glad you said that because my at least basic understanding of at least when it comes to a backup quarterback is that your backup, it should always be a similar mold of your starter, so that knock knock, in the case of emergency, the playbook doesn't change too much or whatnot. Or even then, if you're just running like kind of practice drills or whatever, the personnel isn't changing as much. But you're absolutely right. Going from an Anthony Richardson who's running a 4-5 and is mobile as all heck get out, and then you drop in Flacco, it's like there goes half your playbook. Because it's kind of like what you said with the difference between Minshew and Richardson was that it's the lack of arm power changes the playbook. That's why Alec Pierce was so non-existent 2 years ago, and then this past year with Flacco has a big arm, so that's why there wasn't necessarily a drop off with Pierce when the quarterback changed. The offense changed, but as far as like Pierce is concerned, because of the arm thing, that didn't change too much. But yeah, which also I guess leads to more of my Josh Dobbs because Josh Dobbs is a little mobile. He's obviously not Anthony Richardson. If you want a comp of speed, yes, it's Justin Fields. But I'm with you. The backup, a low key guy. I wouldn't hate Daniel Jones, because that would tell me, okay, cool. He's a backup. He's not a serious. You're not bringing him to test for AR, whatever. And even then, don't discredit the mentorship you get from a guy who has been a starter in this league. Obviously, Daniel Jones hasn't been a successful player in this league, but he can still give Richardson some help. Same with Minshew, and obviously Flacco's a little different because he doesn't have a ring, but it's a guy who can help, but he's not a guy where Richardson has to have eyes on the back of his head that someone's coming to take his spot. I think with a young quarterback, with a young player in general, that's the best thing you can do for his confidence is you have someone behind him, but not someone who's a threat to take his snaps away.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the last year for Richardson. I would say they're on a shorter leash with him, especially with the tap out. I think we're on a short leash with Richardson here, and it's like I said earlier, it's put up or shut up here. So we'll see. We'll get to see how he responds to all the pressure, and actually got high hopes because he's working with this guy that saved Josh Allen because I enjoy players trying to fix problems on their own, but Josh had pretty much the same stats after Richardson's first year and a half, and then he saw this guy who fixed his throwing motion. So if he fixed his throwing motion and his footwork, hey, we could have something here. We could.
Yeah, we definitely could. We'll end it off here. We got a long off season. We could definitely stretch it out to more episodes. Obviously, if you watched this far enough already, can't thank you guys for tuning in and listening. If you're not, make sure you're following us on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, at First 56. Obviously, YouTube, the Sideline Sports Network. Subscribe, follow, like, heart, all of that stuff. You can catch our shows as well as great other content from the Sideline Sports team. They were just at the Super Bowl this past season. They're going to have reps probably at the combine. They're going to have reps at the draft. Obviously, a lot of things coming from the Sideline Sports family. So give a subscribe and a tune into that. But as always, on behalf of myself, Gula, and Marcus going to be here. Sideline Sports, this is 156 signing out. We will catch you guys on the next one.